this week's Technique Tuesday video, I'll demonstrate the Dutch heel turn for socks with a heel flap and gusset. As always, if you'd like to jump right to a specific point in the video, there are direct links down in the description. In order to work the Dutch heel, first we have to divide the number of stitches that we have in our heel flap into thirds. So that's pretty easy if you have a multiple of 3. So if you have 30 stitches for your heel flap, you're going to have 10, 10, and 10. And the middle third of your heel will have 10 stitches. But if you have 32 stitches, you can't divide that evenly. So instead, we keep 10 in the center and we put 11 on each side like that. And if you have 34 stitches, then again we keep 10 in the center, but we have 12 at each side. And it isn't until you get to 36, which is a multiple of 3, that you can divide the heel evenly again, and at that point the center third will contain 12 stitches. My little heel flap swatch that I'm working with here has 24 stitches. So when I divide this heel flap into thirds, I have 8 for each third. So the center has 8 stitches. And if I divide it right down the middle, that means I have 4 stitches after the middle and 4 stitches before the middle. So I have marked the center of my heel. This is marked between the 2 stitches. So I have half of my stitches before and half after. And again, the center third of my stitches has 8 stitches. So it's the 4 stitches before and after. So in the first row, I slip the first stitch and then I knit across until I've worked the center third of the stitches. So for me, that means getting to the center and knitting 4 stitches past the center, because again, I have 8 stitches is my center third. So let's just confirm that I knit 4 past the center. Now I do a decrease. I want a decrease that leans to the left. So I'm going to do an SSK. I slip 2 stitches as if to knit, 1 at a time. Insert the left needle in front. You can see that my working needle is pointed to the left, which confirms that I'll be working a left leaning decrease. So I've worked my decrease. I still have stitches left on the needle. I'm going to turn. And now I'm going to slip that stitch, that decrease stitch. Now I want to work that center 8 stitches again. So I'm going to go 4 stitches past the center again. So I'm going to go 8 stitches all the time. I've turned, I've slipped, and now I'm working 8 stitches. So at this point, I want to work a purl side decrease. So I'm going to be working a purl 2 together. So I purl these 2 stitches together. I turn, I slip that stitch that resulted from the decrease, and now I work across my 8 center stitches again. And when I've worked across those 8 stitches, you can see that where I stopped and turned before, there's a gap right here. So the 2 stitches I'm going to decrease now are on either side of that gap. So this is where I do my SSK. Then I turn. I slip that stitch and then I knit my 8 center stitches again. And once again, when I get to this point, you can see that there's this big gap between these 2 stitches, and those are the 2 stitches that are going to be worked together or to close that gap. So I work the purl 2 together, then I turn, I slip that stitch, and then I work across my center 8 stitches. When you have worked back and forth until all of the stitches have been used up and you've completed your decreases, what you'll see is that this particular heel turn is quite square in shape. In fact, another name for the Dutch heel is the square heel. The next step after the heel turn is complete is to resume working in the round. So what you would do here is you would again slip the very first stitch, you would knit across all of these, and then you would be ready to begin picking up stitches along the edge of the first heel flap. So now I want to show you how you could work this same heel flap on an odd number of stitches. So this heel flap, I have 25 stitches instead of 24 stitches. So what I do is I mark the center by marking the center stitch. And for each row, I'm still going to work 4 stitches past the center, but now the center will contain 9 stitches. So I slip the first stitch, and when I come to the center, I work that center stitch, and then I'm working 4 stitches past the center. Then I work my decrease, I turn and I slip, and now again I work 4 stitches past the center, so I'm working 9 stitches. So I use the same process as with an even number of stitches. I slip that first stitch, and then I work across my 9 stitches, and I can use that gap as the clue to which 2 stitches are going to need to be decreased together. But otherwise, it works exactly the same as with an even number of stitches. Let's compare what this heel turn looks like to another really commonly used heel turn. The heel turn for this sock was the round heel, and I have done a video on that, which I will link at the top of the screen. And you'll see that the shape of this turn is quite different from the Dutch heel. This one is sort of semicircular, triangular in shape. It has a narrow base right here, and then the heel flap or the heel turn gets wider and angles out as it continues. So let's talk a little bit about what the advantages and disadvantages of each of these heel turns might be. The width of the Dutch heel at the start of the turn might be too wide for some people. The round heel has flexibility in terms of how wide or narrower it is at the start of the turn, which allows you to modify the fit for heels that are wider or narrower at that point. On the other hand, the Dutch heel ends with fewer stitches than the round heel. This means that the starting circumference of the foot right after you've picked up stitches for the gusset will be narrower when using a Dutch heel than with using a round heel. If you are trying to manage a fit issue, such as an ankle that is larger in circumference than your ball of foot, a Dutch heel can give you a good head start in creating the narrower circumference you need for your foot. But if you have the opposite fit issue with a ball of foot that is larger than your ankle, you may find that the round heel suits you better. Next week, I'll demonstrate a variation of the Dutch heel that gets around that problem of a wide starting point. If you have any comments or questions about today's video or suggestions for videos you'd like to see in the future, you can leave those down in the comments below or join the discussion in my Ravelry group, Rocks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.